Celtic first, and Celtic last, and Celtic over all.
If Celtic were to start the doomsday scenario, the newly appointed manager Wim Jansen would have to virtually build an entirely new team. It was surely too much to ask. The summer signings came thick and fast. Bradford reserve keeper Jonathan Gould was joined at Parkhead by Chelsea's Craig Burley. French fullback Stefan Mahy came from Rennes, while Dutch winger Reggie Blinker arrived as part of a deal that saw Di Canio sold to Sheffield Wednesday. Hibernian forward Darren Jackson, a long-time irritant of the Celtic support, also arrived at Parkhead. Jansen then returned to former club Feyenoord and used a clause in the contract of an unhappy Henrik Larsson to bring the Swede to Glasgow for £700,000. Henrik's first touch in a Celtic shirt would become the stuff of legend. He gifted the ball to Hibernian's Chick Charnley, who promptly fired home from 25 yards to give the Easter Road club a 2-1 home win in the boys' opening league game. The next week, Celtic crashed 2-1 at Parkhead to Dunfermline. 2 weeks into the season, the Hoops were already 6 points adrift of Rangers and playing catch-up with the side who hadn't been caught for a decade. Back-to-back games against St Johnstone witnessed Larsson net a wonderful diving header as the boys progressed in the League Cup and bagged their first league victory. Danish international Mark Rieper then arrived from West Ham, bringing strength and a commanding assurance to the heart of defence. Jansen had steadied the ship. Progress had been made in the League, League Cup and UEFA Cup. The latter competition saw Celtic paired with big spending Liverpool, and although the boys would exit the competition on away goes, they had been the better side over the two legs. Scotland International and European Cup winner Paul Lambert was added to the squad in early November. However, Celtic would lose the first derby clash of the season, 1-0 at Ibrox. What should have been the opening derby clash of the campaign had been cancelled following the death of Princess Diana and was rearranged for November the 19th. Coming so soon after that defeat at Ibrox, Celtic could not afford their rivals taking another 3 points, yet such an outcome seemed horribly unavoidable after Marco Negri gave the visitors an ill-deserved lead. But as the game entered injury time, Celtic won a free kick wide on the right. As the ball was delivered into the Rangers' box, Alan Stubbs leapt high into the floodlit sky. Sensing the importance of the moment, an intense hush had enveloped the stadium. Stubbs got his head to the ball and forcefully directed his header goalwards. An eerie moment of silence was suddenly broken by the Scousers' dramatic roar of yes, as the ball nestled in the net and Celtic grabbed a vital point. A bullish Celtic would underline their championship credentials by taking the first silverware of the season, the League Cup, thanks to a 3-0 final trouncing of Dundee United. By New Year, Celtic were involved in a three-way battle for top spot with Rangers and Hearts. Sat in third spot and 4 points adrift of leaders Rangers, the derby match of January the 2nd was yet another massive challenge. Again Celtic dominated. Recent capture, Howard Bratback, was thwarted on several occasions by Andy Gorham. But just as fears of another Rangers sucker punch was growing, McNamara slid a delightful through ball into the path of Burley, who drove the ball low and hard past the desperate dive of Gorham. Rangers tried to respond, but found Celtic in no mood to relinquish the initiative. With minutes remaining, Celtic pushed on for a second, and when Rangers failed to clear another Hoops attack, Lambert displayed typical poise to deliver a thunderous long-range drive which scorched its way high into the net. Despite two contentious draws with the boys, thanks in no small part to a bizarre timekeeping of Rangers supporting referee Bobby Tate, Hearts would fade from the title race, and although both Celtic and Rangers would stutter along the way, it was the Glasgow side who would be battling it out for the flag. Defeats in the Scottish Cup and League double-header of Rangers were a painful reminder of old times for the Celts, as the counter-attacks of the Ibrox men secured 2 victories. Added to these setbacks was growing speculation that Jansen had fallen out with general manager Jock Brown, and his departure was imminent. But despite all of this, with just 2 games to go, the destiny of the title would be in Celtic's hands. That man Tate would again play a key role. The official was due to retire at the end of the season and had requested his final match Peter's beloved Ibrox. So it was that Tate took charge of Rangers' penultimate clash of the season as they hosted Kilmarnock. Walter Smith's team struggled to break down the resilient Ayrshire side, and with 90 minutes on the clock, the score remained goalless. Knowing anything but a win would be a massive blow to the title hopes of the Ibrox club, Tate allowed the game to continue way beyond the expected injury time. But his plan would backfire spectacularly, as Ali Mitchell netted late for the visitors to send Rangers to a dramatic defeat. The Hoops now knew a win at Dunfermline would seal the championship. Leading 1-0 and dominating proceedings, Celtic would be just 7 minutes from the title when Craig Falconbridge's looping header gave the Pars a point. The title race and the fight to protect the treasured part of Celtic history would go to the final weekend. Celtic at home to St Johnstone, Rangers away to Dundee United.
It's Celtic first and Celtic last and Celtic over.
After the 2-0 match, things went sort of neck and neck between Celtic and Rangers right through to the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And the week before we played St Johnstone, we had a chance to wrap up the league against Dunfermline. Do you remember that? And we were 1-0 up, and then they equalised.
Craig Falconbridge.
Oh, yes.
And that's off the top of my head, Chris. I kid you not. Because I was, as I said to you before, I was sober at these points. Craig Falconbridge, he was on loan at Dunfermline from Coventry City, and he scored a big looping header.
Yeah, he did.
What an anticlimax.
Oh.
I think East End Park was like 99% Tim's that day.
Aye, because, I mean, we were going to win the league that day.
That's right.
No bother whatsoever. And that game, Celtic were rubbish too. They were rubbish that day.
That's right.
And as you say, Simon Donnelly scored and you thought, oh yes. And then, it was right at the death they equalised, wasn't it?
It was late in the day. Aye.
Terrible. And then the old doubt started to creep in. You thought, oh no. And then, of course, we had the following week. Go on.
Do you know, I'd actually like to go and watch the game again. I don't think I've ever watched the game back. Obviously, I've seen the goals a trillion times. But I've never seen the because as I remember, we scored early doors, right? We basically scored as I walked in the ground. I was late coming up.
Oh, it was brilliant.
And Henke rattled in an absolute screamer, and he's kind of settled the nerves for. And as much as people might, I don't know, I'd like to hear what the players going to say. As much, it was still bricking it. And you had that wee hun up front. What was his name?
George O'Boyle.
George O'Boyle. Oh! And he took some great. And St Johnstone gave us a couple of turnings over the past couple of years. There was it certainly wasn't comfortable. I can't say I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for after it. I don't think I enjoyed the game one bit.
I think my blood pressure was so high, and I've talked about this before. George O'Boyle missed a header that I don't know how he missed it, because it was a big loopy cross. Our goalie missed it. Big Jonathan Gould missed the ball, and O'Boyle put it over the bar. And that's one of those slow motion memories I have of him missing that, going, oh, he missed. And then, of course, it was left up to Harold to knock the second one in. And only when we scored the second goal that day did we know that was it. We'd done it. Because Rangers were beating Dundee United 2-1.
That's right, aye.
And everybody had their radios on. We knew Rangers were winning. And if we had slipped up at all, we'd have lost the championship that year.
Which is quite ridiculous. Because you said, as we come in, we were neck and neck. Did we not actually go, take a wee stretch out and they pulled us back in?
That's right.
Because I remember we went to the Midden across the road, and they beat us 2-0 that day. And I think Jonas Tern, remember him? The Swedish fella, he scored a screamer against us. And I was there that day. As I remember, we were right close to flying that away that year, man.
Oh, we'll do our best. That's one thing we are good at,
Oh,
never do anything the easy way.
Aye, you're right. Well, saying that, it makes it more memorable, doesn't it? We made a couple of heroes that day.
I have to admit, and I don't feel very manly at admitting this, I shed a wee tear that day. Let me translate that for you. I cried like a girl.
I was too young and manly for that stuff at that time. It was a following year I started greeting again.
Cried like a girl. Absolute girl. It was fantastic. And I tell you what, I wasn't alone.
Aye, no, I bet you weren't, man. Aye.
That was 10 years of stress all came out in one afternoon that day.
Aye. The walk on at the end of that was unbelievable.
It was just fantastic. So here we were, we'd stopped 10 in a row, right? The best team ever to wear the hoops, best manager in the world. We were ready for world domination again, weren't we?
And then we were back to mayhem.
Mayhem.
It wouldn't be the Celtic way if you weren't having a summer wondering what the hell is going on.
At least Vim gave us 48 hours before he resigned after that.
It was good, man. He let us enjoy it for a couple of days, huh?
2 days! 2 days we got.
Well done, man.
Oh, dear. Okay, so we've got the money in the bank. What happens now?
Well, what then happens is that suddenly, they've all left, with £1.4 million between them. But it gets even more complicated, but I'm trying to keep it simple. At the same time as all this is happening, you've got Gerald Weisfeld hanging about. And Gerald's, a very wealthy guy. He's a Celtic fan, and he wants to take over the club. So he started buying up Celtic shares. And he accumulated a 25% interest in Celtic. So, I ended up having to do a deal with him as well. But that happened later. What had happened on the 4th of March is that he succeeded in taking over. They're buying the shares of the old board. They go. Fergus joins the board, and then that's when the rebuilding process starts to happen.
So what was your role at this stage, David, with Fergus and the rebuilding and the 5-year plan and all that kind of stuff?
Well, the 5-year plan hasn't started, but to date, I'm an advisor to this loose grouping of people. And then when Fergus came in, I was an advisor to the football club for the time that he was there and beyond after he's left. But for the purposes of what we're talking about, I was acting as a consultant to the club from the 4th of March onwards. Mm-hmm. And that's from the very beginnings of the plan to rebuild the stadium, have a share issue, involve the fans, get the club moving forward again. I was involved in that, with the Celtic board at the time.
That plan that you're talking about there, was everybody in this group that you talk about all in agreement on that's how you're going to move the club forward?
No, I think it's pretty well known they weren't, because I've already said that you've got a sort of loose grouping of individuals. Again, very similar with Rangers, I keep saying just now. And the only thing they've got in common is the fact that they're Celtic fans. They don't really get on with each other, and depending on what the issue is, it can be mild dislike of each other, or it can be strong dislike of each other. But it's a loose grouping. So we're basically, we've gone into the club at this stage, and we're now going to have what's called a fundraising or an IPO, Rangers style, if you like. And this is the chance for people to invest. So what happens is, Fergus is in for his 9 million. John Keane commits £1 million. I did a deal with Gerald Weisfeld, whereby he votes in favour of the proposals, and in return, his stepson, Michael McDonald, joins the football board, and he invests £500,000. One of Fergus's associates invests £1 million. Eddie Keane at the time, he invests I think it was £250,000, and then a bunch of other people, including myself, invest a total of probably about £2 million. And that happens over the first 3 months of the new regime at Celtic. So John Keane joins the board, and he's invested $1 million. Michael McDonald joins the football board, and he's invested $500,000. And of course, Brian, Dempsey, he's got the opportunity of doing this as well, but he doesn't go on with Fergus, and he decides that he doesn't want to be part of this because they don't get on. Essentially, there's no point beating about the bush. So Brian didn't invest and didn't join the board, and for the whole time that Fergus was thereafter, they were sniping at each other for the duration. Mm-hmm. Go into a lot more than that, but I don't see the point. It's just there was no relationship there, and there's no point pretending there was.
Brian spoke about it in chapter 10 and explained his side of the story too.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So here we are. We're in the club, and there's been a lot of money invested in the football club at this stage. Now, was this just all a build up to the share issue and to go to a PLC?
Well, yeah, the whole plan always involved having a share issue. So we come into the club in March. We have a private share issue in June with the amounts of money that I've already mentioned. And then towards the end of the year, January 95, we have the IPO, Celtic PLC, coming to the stock market, coming to the AIM market, and issuing shares to the fans. And of course, Fergus is saying, I have the money, I have the skill sets. With your support, we can sort Celtic out. The plan is to build a 60,000-seater stadium with proper facilities for fans. And if we do that, we will be capable of generating all the revenues required to put a competitive team on the park, a team that's capable of winning the league, taking on Rangers, because they're going great guns at the moment. But only if we create that base will we be able to live in the 21st century. There's no halfway measures, there's no halfway house, there's not really any alternative to this plan. The law of the land, the Taylor report means we have to have seats in Celtic Park, because if we don't, you can't come and watch Celtic. 8,000 people in the old stand can come and watch Celtic, but nobody else can. So we don't have a choice here. And so this was all said, that he would do all this, he would sort all this out, and he would leave after 5 years, and he would offer his half of the club to the fans after 5 years. And that's what he did.
There's absolutely no confusion over that. He said he would do that at the beginning, and that's exactly what he did. And I think that's why Fergus McCann gets an awful lot of respect from.
Well, you don't have to agree with him, but at the end of the day, you have to have respect with somebody who, when they say they're going to do something, does it. You can't criticise anybody that does as they say. And he did everything he said he would do. And that's why he's got respect from Celtic fans. That's why... and the fact that we're in a very strong financial position because of that base that was created when he was there. That's why he's got respect. Living within your means is a sensible thing, and that was his view. So he's got respect because what he said and what he did has proven to be correct. That's why he's got respect.
And even at the time, I remember there were people questioned everything Fergus done, but they were questioning the fact that Celtic Park would have 60,000 seats. And I remember Fergus saying, they'll come, and that being his famous quote on that, and he was absolutely right. But you guys that are advising Fergus, did you agree with that at the time?
Well, you could never be quite sure, and Fergus always did. It was very difficult to get Fergus to change his mind, and he was usually correct. So you have to think twice before you can get him to change your mind. I mean, I got him to change his mind with giving some money to the old directors, but I mean, that's about the only time I can remember. A lot of people did question whether we needed 60,000 seats. But, we did, so he was right, so it doesn't really matter. You got to remember, there was a horrible old ground. It had atmosphere, etc., but it was a horrible old ground, and his view was that if you give them a decent seat with a decent view, they will come. And they did. So he was right. But a lot of people did question it at the time.
And what was the vision moving forward? You're talking about taking over a team here that we ended up going to Hampden the following year. We had Lou Macari as a manager. Did Fergus from day one, along with this group that you talk about, plan to change the complete culture and the whole face of Celtic as it was before the takeover?
No, because he went into that business and he decided that I will take people as I find them. If you're good, you get to stay, and if you're no good, there's the exit door. So, there's a lot of people working in Celtic, and it is a long time now, but there are people working in the building just now that were there before Fergus. But there's been a lot of people that left. Now, the manager was in exactly the same situation. He did not. Fergus did not come in with the intention of sacking, Lou Macari. There was a specific reason for the fallout, and that was the World Cup. Fergus McCann's view was that both the infrastructure of the club and the team needed rebuilding, and that was a full-time issue to be dealt with in the close season, because we were basically taking it over at the end of season 93-94.
Yeah.
So Macari was told, you do not go to the World Cup in the US. We have a very poor team. I want you on the case 24/7, rebuilding this team, with a budget. And Macari, was determined to go to the World Cup, went to the World Cup and get sacked as a consequence of. So nobody knows whether he would have been a good manager or not, or what. But again, that's what happened. So there's no point speculating what could have happened. But that was a specific raison d'être for Lou Macari's departure.
And the search continued for a replacement for Wim the Tem. I find it absolutely unbelievable at that time that Wim Jansen, took up his bed and left.
I've read a lot about it since. I have to say, I've read a lot about it since, and at the time we always, I don't know about yourself, but I certainly took the Wim Jansen's a man, so get him signed up. He's a guy. And Jock Brown was this utter scumbag. He was a horrendous guy, a blight on Celtic. But reading back into it, I don't think Wim was the innocent party that he was. We made him out to be.
I don't know if he was innocent or guilty, but I think he stood up for himself, and maybe in the past that hadn't always been the case for the football manager. I think he stood up to Fergus, and Fergus didn't like it. And of course you had Jock Brown then acting under the instructions of Fergus, and Jock Brown really, his persona started to even outshine Fergus at that stage, I thought. He became a bigger character.
I don't know if it's just for my wee bit of research and looking into. There's a hell of a lot of quotes coming from Jock Brown with regards Wim Jansen that have never seemed to be challenged. And see the fact that the players, nobody kind of down tools and says, I'm off. Wim Jansen's no here, I'm away. Because that was the big thing when Wim Jansen left. We all kind of had a worry about Henke going. I remember that. You were kind of going, wherever he goes, Henry Larsson will go with him.
That's right.
But there was even like guys like Paul Lambert who rated him. there was no real desire for everybody to kind of follow the manager out the door, which you get sometimes when managers feel they've been screwed off. So, I don't know. I don't know if I kind of totally... I think wee Wim could have been a bit of a pain in the bum himself.
Yeah, maybe I should rephrase that. I think the dislike for Jock Brown from the fans was more than the dislike for Fergus at the time.
Yeah.
Is that a better way to put it?
That's 100% true. But you think about it though, because we were ingrained with this guy Jock Brown, and he was on the telly, and he was doing match commentary, and automatically he's in the press, so he's a Hun. that's kind of, and now we've got this Hun telling us, and he kind of the way he spoke, he seemed to talk down to us, didn't he?
He did.
Do you remember the whole the Paolo Di Canio thing? Like, use your own mugs. I'll just change this terminology and we'll punt him.
Yeah, we'll exchange him. He wasn't sold.
Exactly. I mean, as if use your own mugs.
Oh, I know. Jock Brown, my God, this really is trawling through it tonight, isn't it?
Wild. Some of the stuff just. But as I say to you, I don't know if Jock Brown was as bad the guy that we think he was. I don't know if his revision is. I don't know if I'm kind of just with hindsight. But I mean, Wim Jansen never really went away and made a career anywhere else, did he?
No, he went off to the Far East or something after that, didn't he?
I think that was a good few years after. I don't even think. I think he kind of floated about, living off, going to Celtic dues and all that.
Selling wigs in the bars.
Exactly, aye. Big puffy jackets.
So that was it. That was he'd packed his bag and he was off ski. And again, it started off with a hunt. The hunt for Red October, the hunt for the new manager started again.
Yeah, but again, I've said that I don't know many times the end of the night, but see the no internet thing. Well, I'll take that back. Internet was just coming in now. You kind of had it, but it was one of the ones you had to plug in and it went
America Online.
You could have used a phone and all that. It's cable, you know what I mean? But so we were still very reliant on the Daily Record and that other type of that media. We're always relying. So every day you were getting a different guy. Oh, this is a new. I remember at one point Andy Roxburgh was talked about getting his Celtic job. Imagine that, Andy Roxburgh. Oh.
You must have been phoning those weird numbers off teletext, were you?
Sitting on teletext all day, try to pause it.
It was funny. I was interviewing Stephen Sullivan, who worked for the Celtic View, and he was doing the Sean Fallon book, and he actually came clean to say he was the voice on the other end of the line that we were paying 36p a minute for. Whenever we were saying all these superstars from South America, oh wait a minute, we'll get on to that in a minute.
Exactly, aye. But it was like Celtic sound big, and it tells you. Basically, somebody read the Daily Record at one word every 3 seconds.
That's right.
Well,
one sentence and then telling you how much you were paying for each of these sentences.
Aye. You're about 6 knicker down. You're like, oh dear, here we go.
Did you know the significance of stopping Rangers winning 10 in a row when you signed for Celtic, or is that something that you thought about in later years?
No, if I knew that, I probably wouldn't sign that contract. That's how important it was. And I think that helped. There were a lot of new signings that year, and I think that helped because I think all of us were just eager to get our careers on track or back on track, and didn't know that much about the rivalry between Rangers and Celtic, and I think that was good because if we knew that, I don't think that we would have been able to stop them. I think that was one of the blessings in disguise that we didn't know that, and we obviously during these they get more and more aware how important it is, but I think that we coped quite all right, actually, with everybody there during the circumstances, because it's not easy to. I think we were 8 or 9 new players coming in and mixing together with the players that already were there. That's never easy,
comments that Neil Lennon has made is he wants to sign players that can handle playing for Celtic and what that entails. And how long did it take you to realise the level of pressure that playing for Celtic entailed?
No, I mean, you realise that after a few months playing there, because living in Glasgow is a big city, but when you have two teams there competing for everything, it's not that big. So you realise straight away that it's an immense pressure on you to play for Celtic, because a lot of people that depends on Celtic, I mean, fans and everything around it. I mean, some people live with it, and to have the bragging right on a Monday when you come back to work, it's very important to people.
That last day of the season, Henrik, you obviously scored the first goal, and then we thought we were going to win really easily that day, but it didn't turn out that way. It was a bit of a slog in the end, and then, of course, Mr. Brotback scored the second goal. What was the feeling in the camp that day? I know, as a supporter who was at the match that day, it was very emotional. Did you guys feel it?
But you have to go back a week, because we were leading 1-0 against Dunfermline.
That's
everybody was sharing, and then they scored the equaliser quite late. And I mean, we wanted to finish it there, but we didn't manage. And then we come back to Celtic Park, and you have a grown man coming up to me. What I remember was crying and saying, "Please do it next week." on that day was immense. I think that's one of the biggest games I ever played in my career, probably the biggest.
No pressure then, right?
There was a lot of pressure because a lot of people were anxious around the stands and in the camp, and because we knew we had to win that game, and they created a few chances before we scored a goal. I think they had one at the crossbar as well.
That's right.
It was immense pressure on that day, but we managed to handle the pressure, and we won the game, and it was just a great feeling afterwards, great feeling of relief, because it meant a lot to us players, but I think it meant even more to the people supporting Celtic.
After that season, we were on a bit of a high, and things were looking good, and then Wim Jansen left. Were you disappointed when he left, Henrik?
Of course you're disappointed when somebody has been bringing you in and he leaves, but I wasn't disappointed at him. I know Wim is a man that he's very proud, and if he feels he can't do anything more, or his hands are getting tied, he will not stay on. So I was disappointed, but at the same time I remember saying to the journalist that asked me, I mean, I'm a grown man now, and I'm going to miss him. I have to stand on my own legs now, and you just have to go on, because players and managers leaves during a season, during your career, because you very rarely play with the same players for a long time, or the same managers.
And then Joe Venglos came in, and Celtic fans, believe it or not, have a great love for Joseph Venglos. What did you think about his management style, and what did the rest of the lads in the team think about Joe Venglos?
Oh, it's the same. He was a great man, great person, and it was a little bit different, the way that you were used to train, but I don't think that I didn't have any problems with it within the camp, not at all. But obviously it's always going to be difficult to replace somebody that just won the league, so that's going to be difficult. But I think he's done a great job for Celtic, and one of the best signings ever for Celtic he did in Lubomir Moravcik, and that was good enough in my opinion.
And after Joel left, obviously John Barnes came in as he was appointed as manager, and that was probably one of the low points of your career, because that's the season you broke your leg. That's correct. Yeah,
I broke my leg in Lyon, and that wasn't surely not one of the high points in my career. But I think in looking back at it now, I think it was good for me to have a little bit of rest and building up my body in order to be able to play the way I did afterwards. And I mean, I think that John Barnes was a little bit unlucky. The way he wanted to play, I think it was a little bit too early. He wanted to play with two sitting midfielders, and everybody laughed at that. And if you look today's football, everybody is playing with two defense-minded midfielders. So he was a little bit ahead of his time. But I think that as an Englishman, man, it's hard to comprehend how big the Celtic work is.
Yeah.
And I think that he took it a little bit too easy. I mean, it was his first job, and I think that it was a little bit too big for him at the moment.
So the search finally ended up on Dr. Joe Van Gloss. Now, I think Dr. Joe Van Gloss is one of the most interesting characters in the sort of modern phase of Celtic history, because he was a bit of an enigma, wasn't he? He was a strange appointment. But yet, when you see what he'd done before he came to Celtic, you kind of say to yourself, "Oh, wait a minute."
There was kind of conflicting views. So, I was sitting in a bar in Cambuslang when the news came that Dr. Joe had got the job, and we've already been through our emotions for the year earlier with Wim Jansen. I kid you not, Chris, I wanted to smash this boozer up. I was so angry that we'd done it again. We'd went and go to this guy that I'd never heard of. And I consider myself quite a good football brain at that point. And we'd go to somebody I'd never heard of, my Nelly Puff.
I know. And even when he arrived and you saw the first photographs, you were like, what? You know, the perm was out and Doctor Who was in, you know?
Oh, he perfected the Donald Trump haircut before Donald Trump.
But God love him. Look what he walked into. He walked into a team that had stopped 10 in a row. You know, he walked into a bonus row with the players at the time.
But to come back to what you were saying a minute ago, before we come to that, if you look at his pedigree, it wasn't bad, was it? I mean, he had that Aston Villa spell.
But look, see the Aston Villa spell. All anybody ever talks about when you talk about Dr. Joe at Aston Villa was that he brought in a dietitian and he was a weirdo for doing that.
Well, that's what I was going to come to. But I think he got them relegated, did he? Or maybe he was close to getting them relegated, whatever it was. But he took Czechoslovakia to the Euros finals or something.
Yes.
And he had these revolutionary... And the fact, I think he spoke about 15 languages or something mental like that. And the guy had been about, and he was a very clever man. But it just, again, as you say, he walked into a club that had... Here's an analogy for you. Do you know that way that if there's a bird walking by you, you hold your breath, and then the bird walks away, you let your breath out? Right? That's what Celtic had done that season. We'd done it. We'd stopped in 9 in a row.
Yeah, that's right. Pressure was off, or was it?
Well, that's it, aye. We thought we were superstars.
Oh, we were, that's why.
We'd had it, the Hun destroyer.
We'd hammered St Johnson to win the championship. We were superstars.
Aye, we'd won the double. What a team. Well, we're going to win the Champions League.
Oh, stick on. So here was Dr. Joe, arrives at the club and walked into a bonus row with the players. Hardly the best of starts, was it?
There's a legacy of Joe Brown again, innit?
See, I threw that out for you there and you bet on it. Good man.
Yeah. There's a legacy of Joe Brown. I don't know, Dr. Joe... Right, I'm going to go... I think there's a wee bit of Dr. Joe, and you can just imagine petting him in the head kind of thing, right? He came in and he was getting patronised constantly by the media. I mean, who was it challenged him to a race? Somebody challenged him to a race. I was Hugh Keevans or something. I mean, this old guy comes in, what a racy old guy. but I mean, even he'd signed Vidal Recef and he paid £1.5 million, and that was ridiculed. That was absolutely ridiculed because he'd been at Luton Town and he'd been rotten. Mm-hmm. He signed Mark Viduka. Mark Viduka went off his nut and disappeared.
Mark Viduka, what was he? All depends. Yeah, all depends, wasn't it?
It was Marco Viduka. But remember, we'd signed him and then he buggered off straight away.
That's right, because he had mental problems. That was brilliant, wasn't it?
Or something, aye. And then, famously, he done the job in Goat Lubo, and he get ridiculed for that. But in fairness to him, I was raging when we signed Lubo as well.
So was I. Because it wasn't the signings we were expecting. He spent 300 grand or something on Lubo, didn't he?
300 grand on a 33-year-old.
Yeah. What the hell are you doing? We're Celtic. We've just won the championship.
Exactly. But and no, what annoyed me as well, Chris. 2 weeks earlier, we'd sold John Paul McBride for 200 grand, and I was going, we've sold the future of the club, and now I'm debt free. I know my football, right?
That's easy to see. Aye, it was, and even the start of that season was horrendous. We won 3 games out of the first 10 or something.
It wasn't going right. It didn't actually go right until we beat the Huns, did it?
No. So you're talking about the 5-1 match, obviously, there, right?
Yeah.
See that 5-1 match? That wasn't on TV, and I didn't get a ticket for the match. For some reason, I don't know what the reason was, I ended up listening to that match on the radio.
Listen to a Huns game on the radio, dear God.
Unbelievable, wasn't it? Or I was sick or something, or I couldn't go for whatever reason, and I sat in my front room listening to that on the radio, and it wasn't even the commentary match. It kept going back to Radio Scotland or Clyde or whatever it was I listened to it for some boy shouting about what was happening, and I didn't even see the match until later on.
You think of that nowadays, that a Huns game wasn't on the telly. That's quite mental, isn't it?
That is unthinkable, isn't it?
But we'd signed Hingy just before that as well, Johan Mjalby. I mean, you
That's
think
right.
of these signings, they were good signings, weren't they?
Well, they were really, part of the team that Martin O'Neill took over, and they were the ones he kept. That was sort of part of the backbone of the team for Martin O'Neill starting off, right?
But again, Chris, like I said there, let's take a wee step back to what I was saying earlier. We're now in the middle of signing guys, and we're only signing foreign guys. Whereas 5 year earlier, that would have been unthinkable.
Aye, that's right.
That's mental, isn't it? If you think about it that way, how far we've came. Whereas, like the scouting now is a big thing, and we had. Well, I suppose when we're signing these guys, we'd never heard of. They're like managers, never mind players.
But still, we had the legs of Mark Burchell coming through, who scored that day.
That's right, aye. Mark Burchell's the future. I tell you, I know much about football.
And it all worked out well in the end for Mark Burchell, didn't it? We'll put him in with Liam Miller, shall we? That's harsh.
Oh, that is harsh.
Let's talk a wee bit about the year we moved to Hampden.
Yeah.
So, was it always the plan to make that move and let the bulldozers come in, or were we going to do it in stages? What was the thinking behind the Hampden year?
It was always the plan, even before the club was taken over, that we would have to play at Hampden on the basis that you couldn't possibly play at Ibrox.
Well, I'm glad we established that.
Technically you could, but practically you couldn't. So if you've got a big fan base, and it's just had a jolt of adrenaline with the takeover, and you've got massive demand for tickets, you have to, there's only one place you can play, that is at Hampden. Now that was always the intention, that you would start off one season at Hampden, then build the stadium, enough seats in the stadium for the following season to move back to Celtic Park. But again, Celtic, I have to tell you, and there's no paranoia on my part, had no friends or few friends in the Scottish game. Certainly no or few friends in the SFA. Let me be absolutely clear, the SFA took their pound of flesh and some in order to let Celtic play at Hampden in that season.
Why do you say that, David?
Well, why do I say that? I say it because it's a fact. It's not an opinion. They knew that Celtic had nowhere else to go. Remember, they can't go to Ibrox. You can't go. There's no other club. There's no other stadium capable of accommodating the Celtic fan base. So the SFA knew that Hampden was the only show in town. Knew that Celtic, had nowhere else to go, and exploited that to the maximum by demanding the maximum for letting Celtic play there. You know, it starts getting into the realm of conspiracy. If you think, had it been any other club, would they have been
we love a conspiracy theory. We love a conspiracy theory.
But you know, I'm dealing with facts here, and I'm not going to go down that road. And of course, you know what happened with George Cadet a few years later.
Oh yes.
So it's my personal view that you know, we had no friends, and I'm not sure what in the SFA. It's debatable what the situation is just now.
And how much did he pay to rent Hampden?
Let's just say it was a lot more than it should have been.
Okay. So the Hampden year was absolutely horrible anyway. You know, the be at Hampden as a supporter was absolutely terrible. I hated Hampden. And even to come back to Celtic Park that was unfinished with temporary stands at both ends and stuff like that, you know, was brilliant. Even though it wasn't finished, it was still brilliant.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, there was a whole lot of energy unleashed in the Celtic situation, you know, and you're right, you know, it was a bit strange, you know, playing at Hampden. It was a year of transition, you know, you've got a brand new board, brand new ownership, a brand new manager, brand new team, playing in an unfamiliar environment. And when you mix all that up together, and the circumstances of how they came to be there and the way they were treated by the SFA, you know, there's not a lot of the positive dynamic going on there. It was an uncomfortable year, and it was a year that everybody, you know, would like to forget. But once we were back at Celtic Park, albeit, you know, half a building site, you know, as each month, because you could see it when you were at Celtic Park. Each home game, there's a little bit more getting done, a little bit more getting done. So you could see it before your very eyes, improving all the time, and you know, that's what happened.
And again, you see how the Fergus McCann years developed. I mean, Fergus didn't sort of shrink from very many fights when you talk about George Cadety and the Paolo Di Canio issue and things like this. Some people would even suggest that the year that we won the league to stop Rangers winning 10 in a row wasn't even in the plan.
Well, that's not true. I mean, that's categorically not true. I think, you know, some people might say that, but they usually have an agenda or a vested interest in saying that. I mean, there's no substance or no truth to that allegation or that suggestion.
I don't even mean it as an allegation. What I'm saying was it was a surprise when we did stop 10 in a row. You know, Fergus didn't care about stopping 10 in a row. I don't think that's true either. You know, at the end of the day, we all these during his 5 years, we still don't have enough money as Rangers for the team, right? For the team, we don't have enough money for Rangers. That's a fact, and that's for two reasons. One of which has become apparent. The two reasons are number one, we had a stadium to build. So we had to allocate, and Rangers have no stadium to build. So for every pound note that's coming through the turnstile, you know, we're having to allocate a significant proportion of that to rebuilding the stadium. Because if you don't have the stadium, you don't have anything. So for every pound that's coming through, you know, there's 50p, you know, that's going to building the stadium, and you have no choice. The second aspect, which made it very difficult to win the league, irrespective of who was the manager, is because they were overspending. You know, they were overspending from the day David Murray went into that club in '88 till the day he left it. So they were spending money that they did not have. And the price they paid for doing that was going bust. So that means two things. One, Fergus McCann is not having rescued Celtic from going bust. Is not going to spend money the club does not have and run the risk of going bust again. And he was correct in that, because Rangers have gone bust. Secondly, you know, he's having to spend money on the stadium, because if you don't do that, you can't generate the revenues that subsequently would help us get to Seville, for example. So it's going to always, behind closed doors, it always was going to be an uphill struggle to win the league, whilst we were having to put money aside to build the stadium.
So Rangers, we were at a disadvantage to Rangers because they had the stadium, their own stadium, and they were spending money they didn't earn. So it's like the Pied Piper. What if somebody else is doing something stupid? That doesn't mean you do something stupid. What you got to do is have faith in your conviction and follow it through. And I'm so hardline and so pro McCann on these issues that you would never get somebody like me to deviate from that, whilst it's tough. But I have to say, during this very difficult period, the world and his wife just don't get it, and they're being helped not getting it. There's an agenda going on. Fergus McCann is getting undermined by certain people. It doesn't matter who they are, and we don't have to talk about that, because he's the stranger that's come to town, and he's the stranger that's won the prize, and he's the stranger that's got Celtic, and he's the guy that's getting all the kudos. Just like Rangers, there's a lot of guys don't like that. They want it without paying for it. Mm-hmm. But he's got it, and he's paid for it, and he's doing a good job. So there's always an agenda going on. That's the point, with the disenfranchised, or those that, didn't get it. Number two, and this is all relative to Rangers again, David Murray is offering succulent lamb, it's the phrase, you're familiar with that phrase,
oh, yes,
to all the media guys. He's sucking up to them, he's flying them here, flying them there, he's entertaining them, he's dropping them stories, he's giving them stories. He's doing all these questionable things, and McCann is not prepared to do that. So he's not playing this game with the press because it's immoral and it's not right, and why should he? So he's not getting a good coverage from the press. And then, it saddens me to say, but it's true, the amount of fans that say they don't believe a thing that they read in the press. I'm afraid most fans do believe what they read in the press. So McCann's getting a bad coverage in the press, and that's making his the job very much more difficult than it would be without the press. But it is what it is. You got to live with it, and you got to deal with it, and that's what happened. But it was a very difficult period, and it required absolute guts, balls, and determination to proceed, come hell or high water, with the sensible plan, on the basis that once you've done it, what will emerge at the other end is a much more financially secure, solvent Celtic operating from a sound base, a stadium that is bought and paid for. And that's what we have. And that is why Celtic fans, to a man, recognise, hey, the wee man was right. See the amount of people I've met that said I booed Fergus McCann when he unfurled that flag. And I regret it. And I regret it to this day. The amount of people that tell me that is amazing, and the reason why is it's been proven to be correct. Mm.
So in November, 5-1 humping a Rangers, right? And everything was hunky-dory again, wasn't it?
Well, especially 7th of November, Jock Brown wrapped it.
And I remember trying to do a cartwheel on London Road that day. We got off the bus and we were told, walking up, past the boys that sell all the badges and the hats and the scarves and the t-shirts and stuff, Jock Brown's away. And we actually turned away from Celtic Park and ran back down the London Road cheering. We ran away from the stadium cheering.
Honest to God, it was like a new signing. It was like a new signing, him going away. Ding dong, the witch is dead and stuff like that.
I don't know what Fergus was playing at, because I put the spotlight back on him again. Although he was getting close to the end of his tenure at that stage.
But Fergus loved him though. Fergus thought he was the bee's knees. I think there was a kind of a go at the press and everything when Jock Brown left, wasn't there?
Aye. But the Celtic fans were absolutely delighted that day. God, we're fickle, aren't we?
Yep.
That's what makes us special.
Exactly. You keep telling yourself.
So probably one of the darkest days we have as Celtic supporters, and I'm going to bring it up. You can't hide, Scott. You can't hide. We've done the Coca-Cola Cup final. It can't be any worse than that.
It was worse.
I know that.
It was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous. And there's only one game that comes close to it, and that's not in my era, so I don't need to talk about it. But Chris, that was horrendous. That was
from start to finish,
sore as it gets. And anybody who was at that game, or anybody who remembers that game and was kind of living, that's why no winning it at their midden a couple of years ago hurt so much.
That's right, no doubt about that.
Because that was sore what they done that day. It was the game was sore, and what happened at the end was sore. And see what you were saying, you were greeting. Well, I was greeting that day.
Like, that wasn't just putting a knife in, that was turning it around as well.
Yeah.
That was worse than Motherwell. That day was just, we lost something as a club that day.
Mm-hmm.
That we'll never get back, Scott. We'll never get that back until we win the championship at Ibrox, if that exists in the future.
As I said to you, Chris, it was there. It was there to be done.
It was. That's right.
It was there, and I came out of that game, I was livid. And people were telling me, we've won this, we've won that, which is true, and of course they've got a point. But anybody who went to that game that day, and the fact it was wee McCann, who Celtic had been courting for years, and then the Dallas thing, and then
the boy falling off the stand and everything. Just everything that day was what's bad about being in love with this team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Aye, the Hugh Dallas Memorial Corner, I sat in that stand time as well.
And we also lost the Scottish Cup that year, the Rangers too.
A great that day as well, Chris.
Can we just move on? Let's talk about Jock Brown. What happened to him?
I big back job. But this is what I'm saying. I think there's a wee bit of what's it, rose tinted spectacles when it comes to Dr. Joe. Because you think about it, he might have gave us these fantastic players. Well, of course he did, right? But we lost the treble, and they won the league at our midden, and that's horrendous, isn't it? If you think about it, and there was a bit of dubiety about whether he should have stayed on after that. And you think about it now, there's no way in the world he should have stayed on.
No chance. Done.
I mean, the thing that kind of killed him in supporters' minds, if you remember, was the fact that he dropped Mark Butchell for the cup final. Mm-hmm. That was a big talking point at the time. That's
right, because wee lad was on fire at that stage.
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you think about it, he should really have been punted for signing Scott Marshall.
You've got a real bee in your bonnet about Scott Marshall, don't you?
Biggest dumpling in it, and it's twisted as well because his brother was Gordon.
Poor old Gordon.
I'd punch him in the head if he wasn't sick.
Celtic legend you're talking about there, mate. Alright, so that the end of that season, when we're all down the dumps, Fergus was done. He'd done his 5 years.
Yeah.
And left with everything that he said he would do and a few things that he said he wouldn't do. And looking back today in 2013 to Fergus McCann's reign, I think if we're all sensible about things and don't get carried away, he done a very good job. He made some mistakes, he made some enemies, but he stood up for Celtic and he done more or less what he said he would do from day one.
I would have been a pro Fergus McCann person, Chris. I've spoke to people who assures me there was 3 and 4 and 5 other people ready to step in if Fergus never took the club. However, who were they? I mean, Fergus stood up, and as you rightly said, he flung a business plan down. He didn't fling dreams and hopes and stuff. He never made it. His plan was to build a stadium, to get us back in a level footing, and to win the league. Bada bing, bada boom. The fact he buggered off for £40 million, that shows you how sound the business plan was. How morally right, I don't know, but the business plan was right.
But do you fault him for that, Scott? I mean, that's what he said he was going to do. It's not like he left the club cash strapped.
And the fact of the matter, Chris, is that that's right. He never took the money out of the club. He took the money for selling the shares.
That's right.
So they were his shares to sell. What seems to stickle on people is that he never built the youth academy. However, as I recall, and I'm here to be corrected, he said, if Celtic follow the proposals I've set in plan, then I'll do that. And Celtic went out and done the one thing that he was adamantly against, and that was allowing Kenneth Douglas into the club.
That's right. That's right.
So are we right to criticise Fergus for that?
I don't know if you're right to criticise him for it. I think
me and you would have done it, wouldn't we?
I would have donated half that 40 million, no doubt about that, into the youth policy.
We'd be sitting here today going, I wish I would have done that.
Maybe next year, Scott. Maybe next year. Dermot Desmond, give us a ring. But no, I mean, fair play to him. He done what he said he would come to do, and I don't think we can fault him for that,
No.
And
but I don't think anybody. I mean, Henrik Larsson maybe aside, I don't think there's anybody in the Celtic history, certainly in that era, that comes out 100% clean in what he's done. Do you know what I mean? We've already spoke about Tommy Burns. We all love Tommy Burns and stuff, but he kind of made an arse at the end up. So, I mean, the Boys Against Bigotry thing, while I can understand to an extent where the logic was coming from, I felt it was wrong. It certainly...
I think maybe his timing was wrong. Let's put it like that.
It was implemented wrong, Chris. If you were going to basically sell it as we're against bigotry and sectarianism, then yeah. But I think that's one that'll always stick in the throat.
Probably because at that stage he was trying to change a culture overnight, and you can't change culture overnight. You chip away at it.
Yeah, 100%.
But Fergus was just bulldoze in the same way that Fergus always is. Yeah, and that was just his persona, and well, that's the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
The Wee Man, the story of Jimmy Johnston. In the early 1960s, there wasn't much colour round the slopes of Celtic Park. It was a drab time, with the club in a deep slump, a situation which would persist until Jock Stein cleared the decks in 1965 to bring the glory days back to paradise. Future Celtic captain Billy McNeill reflected on the state of Celtic at that time, noting that there was nothing to cheer about at Celtic. In one game, Caesar remembers the ball being knocked out of play, only for it to stop at the feet of a flame-haired ball boy, who immediately began a set of keepy-uppies behind the Celtic goal. The crowd cheered, and it happened again, then again, then again. McNeill admitted that eventually it got embarrassing because he was so skillful. The punters appreciated him more than the efforts of those in the park. All those cheering the tiny teenager could be forgiven for not realising that this young man would become the greatest player Celtic had ever seen. Jinky, the Lord of the Wing. Actor Tony Roper recalls a conversation in a Glasgow pub where two Rangers fans were discussing which of their players was the best winger in Scotland. Roper remembers another punter of the green and white persuasion leaning across the barroom counter and stating, "There's a wee laddie in the Celtic reserves that's going to cause the pair of you sleepless nights." Born in View Park, Nuttingston, James Conley Johnston honed his dribbling skills in his mother's upstairs post-war council flat, knocking over milk bottles as he perfected the arts of the twist. He would wobble his way round the park on a metal railing, instinctively building skills and balance that would serve him so well in later years. At night, he would read and reread the story of English football icon Stanley Matthews, whose jinking football style would light up the old First Division in the 1950s, and whose achievements would be surpassed by Johnston during his time with Celtic. At school, he was a standout. His PE teacher, Tommy Cassidy, knew his young charge was a star, so he began pestering his great friend, former Celt Sammy Wilson, who eventually, after 4 years of prompting, talked Celtic manager Jimmy McCorry into taking a look at the boy. Johnson was brought into the club as a ball boy and began to wow the crowds with his skills. However, the hoops would almost let the mini-magician slip through their fingers, and it wasn't until Manchester United make a determined effort to bring Jimmy south in 1960 that the Parkhead club acted decisively to seal his future in Glasgow. A year later, Johnson progressed into the reserve side in a 4-1 victory over St Johnstone, where he scored 1 and made 3 of the goals. After the game, manager Jimmy McCorry whisked the diminutive flyer into the boardroom and sealed his signature on senior club forms. No sooner was Jinky bedding into the club than he was off again, farmed out to Blantyre Celtic for a spell in the juniors, aimed at adding grit and stamina to his myriad of silky skills. 2 years later, in March 1963, Johnson made his first team debut in a hapless Celtic side who were pummeled 6-0 by Kilmarnock. A few weeks later, he would record his first goal in another stinging loss against Hearts, the first of his 130 goals in the hoops. It wasn't until after the arrival of Jock Stein, who accosted the wee man in a changing room after a reserve match, did the soaring career of Johnson take off. On that fateful night at Celtic Park, Stein's mammoth husk towered over the tiny Lanarkshireman as he demanded to know why Jimmy was wasting away in the reserves, as he boomed, "Get out there and show me what you can do, and I'll have you in the first team at the weekend." From there, things took off, and by October 1965, Johnson had his first medal in a 2-1 victory against Rangers in the Scottish League Cup. The league title soon followed, and by mid-1966, Jimmy's wizardly dribbling skills, his slight and childish frame, and his shock of bright red hair made him one of the most recognisable players in European football, coached and coaxed by the masterly Stein, who kept an ever-watchful eye on his prize from trackside. Jimmy returned from Celtic's 1966 North American tour to marry the girl of his dreams, Agnes Doherty, who swapped her surname for his and embarked on a roller coaster marriage the same season Celtic embarked on their greatest ever journey. And what a journey it was, wrapping up every competition they entered and culminating in the greatest triumph in the club's history in Lisbon, where Jimmy was mesmerising an attack. His first child, Marie, was born just 4 days before the game. No time was given for the glories of the European Cup to sink in, nor the happiness of fatherhood for Jimmy, as the winners of the match had been offered a ticket to Spain to face Real Madrid, the testimonial for Alfredo Di Stefano, a game Jimmy would call the greatest game that Celtic Football Club ever played in. Jimmy single-handedly destroyed Real Madrid, and his slide rule pass through the Spaniards' defence unlocked the goal for Bobby Lennox to seal their fate. At the end of the game, Johnson raised the ball aloft in the centre of the field, and his colleague Bobby Murdoch recalled that he had 125,000 Spaniards shouting, "Ole, ole." The tiny winger was hailed as one of world football's giants. The year after Lisbon, Johnson gave a virtuoso performance in a thrilling 7-2 victory over Dundee United, a game many felt was his best in league football, but would be the mighty Red Star Belgrade who would feel the fire in Jimmy's boots in the European Cup. A phobia of flying was a well-known aspect of Jinky's makeup, and the wily Jock Stein decided to use this to his advantage in a Celtic Park game against the men from the Balkans. Lured with Stein's promise of being released from return leg duties if Celtic won by 4 clear goals, Jimmy ran riot. He scored 2 and set up 3 in a 5-1 victory, which led Captain Billy McNeil to remark later, "He just simply tore a superbly talented team apart." More European glory seemed destined to arrive in 1970, especially after Celtic cuffed the colossal Leeds United in the European Cup semi-final, only to fall at the final hurdle in Milan against the Dutch champions Feyenoord. Still, trophies flowed as Celtic marched towards 9 successive championships, and they also continued to rack up the cups as well, with the 1971 Scottish Cup final replay win against Rangers simply dubbed Johnston's final. Regularly, Jimmy was left battered by his opponents both in Scotland and abroad, and many misjudged his slight frame, which carried the heart of a lion. Alex Ferguson, who would rise to manage Manchester United for a quarter of a century, recalls a Glasgow Derby game where John Craig repeatedly left Johnston lying prone on the track after heavy challenges. Fergie remembers, after Craig had yet again introduced Jimmy to his own brand of industrial football, the wee man dusted himself off and said, "Oh, Craigie, you trying to intimidate me?" before carrying on with the match. Brutality would also be meted out on an industrial scale when Johnston came up against the thugs of both Racing Club from Argentina and Atletico Madrid. As Jimmy's Celtic career drifted to a close in the mid-1970s, famed sports writer Hugh McIlvaney recalled a conversation with Jock Stein on his footballing legacy. Stein firmly believed that his greatest achievement wasn't winning 9 leagues in a row, nor the European Cup, but that his biggest achievement had been keeping that wee man in the game 5 years longer than he might have been. In 1975, Jimmy Johnson swanned out of Celtic Park on a free contract after another row with his manager, who had grown weary of the increasingly erratic behaviour of the falling star he loved so much. As club chairman Desmond White relayed the news of his release, a tearful Jimmy Johnson remarked that it was like being handed down a death sentence. 48,000 fans saw Jimmy toss his boots into the jungle at his testimonial game against Manchester United in 1976, and a sojourn in America with San Jose Earthquakes in the new North American Soccer League would be followed by spells at Sheffield United, Dundee, Shelbourne and Elgin City. However, the flame had gone and Jinky descended into a post-football blaze of alcohol, which would only be arrested when he tried to sell his winners' medals to business tycoon and Celtic fan Willie Haughey. Jimmy found a real friend in Haughey, and who helped him get his life back on track, and until his death in 2006 from the withering motor neuron disease, Jimmy remained a firm favourite with the Celtic fans, as well as becoming a recording artist and friend to A-list movie stars from Hollywood. On St. Patrick's Day of that year, Jimmy's body flew past the fans at Celtic Park for the final time, as tens of thousands lined the streets of Glasgow to cheer his coffin on its final journey past paradise and into history as the man who was voted Celtic's greatest ever star. No doubt it was a source of pride for the wee man that even in death he could still draw the crowds.
So Fergus was out, he left, and Dermot Desmond then became the majority shareholder. Alan MacDonald then came in as chief executive. Mm-hmm. And the dream team of John Barnes and Kenny Dalglish were going to take us to the promised land again. Everything in the garden was rosy, wasn't it?
Oh, again, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, and I'll tell you, to prove my football worth again, I thought it was a great move.
Like, Scott, I don't care what anybody says. I don't know any Celtic supporters that didn't rejoice at that.
Aye,
and it was like, oh yeah,
yeah. Had something kind of slick about it, and at that point, Chris, right, we'd changed. What would you call it? And we were now calling ourselves Team Celtic. And that's without a word of a lie. We were calling ourselves Team Celtic at that point.
I'm cringing here.
Oh, it's horrendous, isn't it? Right, but right for the off, do you know what got me, got John Barnes on my, I was on his side right for the off. Ayo Berkovic. Right, again, there's me proving my football worth that I thought Ayo Berkovic was a sensational signing. We'd went down to West Ham, albeit not the biggest club in England, but certainly not a small club, and we took their best player.
Robbed them.
Just walked up and says, "Here you wee man, you're coming with me." There you go. I mean,
5.75 million. Biggest bargain of the century.
Oh, dear God, guy would be worth millions.
Billions! He was a good footballer.
He was a smashing football player, but he had absolutely no heart whatsoever.
Oh, would you like a list of criticisms right now?
Yeah, that's it. Podcast is cancelled. We're just going to sit and rip on the Fergus.
You know, he sort of took it a wee bit far whenever he gave us all the fingers, like.
Anyway, I was a bit rough. Then he came out and says, I wasn't sticking the fingers up at you, I was sticking the fingers up at the situation I was in.
The man just couldn't take a slag, and what's the point in that? I hate that.
I know.
So you can't laugh at yourself.
Everybody's kidding on their damn fishing rods behind him as he's sticking the fingers up. We also signed Stephen Bonds.
From the sublime to the ridiculous.
It's Celtic first and Celtic last and Celtic over all.
When the day arrived, the sun was shining high over Celtic Park. Just 2 minutes into the game, Henrik Larsson collected the ball on the left touchline under the towering slopes of the New North Stand. He cut inside an opponent and purposely headed on a diagonal run towards goal before releasing a shot from 30 yards. The ball would swerve and dip before flashing past the Saints keeper and crashing into the back of the net. Delirium ensued, but then St Johnson's George O'Boyle failed to convert a decent headed opportunity, and with Rangers winning at Tannadice, nerves were stretched to snapping point. But as the full-time whistle edged closer, Celtic were determined not to falter again, and substitute Bratback, much maligned since arriving from Rosenborg, was about to ensure a place in Celtic history. In 72 minutes, Tom Boyd released Jackie McNamara down the right wing. Jackie galloped down the flank before delivering a low cross into the box. Bratback had timed his run through the centre to perfection, and he raced into the box just in time to dispatch the ball into the net with a delightfully cool finish. It was now party time in paradise. Celtic were champions. The title celebrations of the Celtic support would come to an abrupt end with the departure of Janssen the next day. The exit of the Dutchman was a bitter pill for many fans to swallow, and consequently would signal the beginning of the end for the increasingly loathed Jock Brown. Janssen's leaving was the hangover from an intoxicating season. It was a hell of a headache, but it had also been a hell of a party. Janssen's replacement was former Czech national coach Dr. Joe Venglas. The experienced Venglas would produce a team capable of playing attractive and attacking football. He brought some fine talent to Parkhead, signing Swedish international Johan Mjällby and the immensely gifted veteran Lubo Moravcik. Moravcik displayed a sublime ability in the ball and quickly established himself as a huge fan's favourite. He inspired Celtic to a memorable 5-1 league victory over Rangers, and the boys were unfortunate to end the 98-99 season trophyless. Fergus McCann, as he had always promised, would relinquish power after a 5-year reign at Parkhead. With Dr. Joe on a 1-year contract, this allowed the new men at the helm to make their own coaching appointment, and Celtic were set for their third head coach in the space of little more than 12 months. Having appointed two experienced but low-profile continental coaches, Celtic revealed a startling change of policy when new chief executive Alan MacDonald unveiled a new coaching team of 35-year-old former Liverpool winger John Barnes and Celtic legend Kenny Dalglish. Supporters greeted the appointment of the rookie Barnes with a degree of bewilderment, but concerns were eased by the notion the experienced Dalglish would be on hand to guide both his protege and the team. Despite a disappointing time as Newcastle manager, ex-Liverpool boss Dalglish still retained a reputation as an astute operator, and his Premiership title win with Blackburn was relatively fresh in the memory. His partnership with Barnes appeared a workable gamble, with Kenny's knowledge and connections a seemingly effective safeguard should the former England international need time to settle into management. With a handful of new signings, including $5.75 million record buy Io Berkovic and highly rated young Bulgarian Stilian Petrov, the early signs were promising, if not spectacular. But despite 9 wins in the opening 11 games, a defeat to Rangers, so the Hoops fall 7 points behind their city rivals. The Scottish press had been critical of the Barnes appointment from day one, and were by now becoming increasingly vocal in their doubts about the ex-Watford man. Barnes could just about deal with the sniping of hacks, but what he couldn't cope with was the loss of the irreplaceable Henrik Larsson, who in October 1999 broke his leg in UEFA Cup duty at Lyon. It was an injury which rocked the confidence of the entire club and sparked a spiral of events which would culminate in humiliation for Celtic. In the wake of Larsson's horror injury, Barnes brought in TV talk show host and veteran striker Ian Wright as a short-term but high-earning replacement for the brilliant Swede. Despite a debut goal, it was swiftly apparent that aging former Arsenal forward was not the man for such a Herculean task. A fee of 5.5 million was then splashed on Brazilian defender Rafael Scheidt, a player the coach had only seen a few times on ESPN and on video. Yet a productive December on the field saw Barnes pick up manager of the month, while striker Mark Viduka, another Dr. Joe signing and a highly temperamental talent, received the Player of the Month award. As a new millennium awaited, Celtic went into the new year and the winter break unbeaten in December, and having scored 15 goals in their last 4 games. It had been an historic and turbulent decade on and off the pitch. There had been painful lows and ecstatic highs. Recent performances had hinted at a bright 2000, but just beyond the horizon, the storm clouds were just starting to gather.
It's Celtic first and Celtic last.
Well, you know, we proved how strong our scouting system was as well. We were that good. We could even sign Brazilian internationals that we hadn't even seen play.
I was actually talking about this guy just a couple of days ago.
I can't believe we're talking about this guy.
But it's just an odd one, isn't it? Right? Because at this point, do you remember as I said to you, the internet kind of, at this point I was a fully fledged football buff. Right? I was playing football manager or championship manager, and I knew everybody, right? And we signed this guy, and Tim Vickery. You've heard of Tim Vickery, yeah?
Yes.
Tim Vickery immortalised himself on a podcast show or a show that he done by saying this guy was going to be a sensational player for Celtic. He said he had all the talents to be a world superstar, and he was quite surprised that he was coming to Celtic.
Did he get a cut of the 5 million as well? I bet he looked good in Championship Manager, Football Manager.
Oh my goodness, man! It was atrocious.
But Scott, the hits just kept on coming. Ian Wright.
We signed Ian Wright. Right, we signed Ian Wright to replace Henrik Larsson. How ridiculous a sentence is that?
I'm sitting here and I'm not watching anything, and I'm still looking through my fingers. I don't even want to talk about this.
You got to start greeting again. There you're coming on there, Henry breaking his leg.
Yeah, Leon. Would it all have been different? I know this debate has raged on since that time, right? Would it all have been different for John Barnes if Henrik Larsson hadn't have broken his leg? He thinks so, by the way.
Well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? But John Barnes, I'll tell you the thing that kind of was losing me with John Barnes, we get beat off in Motherwell, and it was very similar to an early defeat. And John Barnes came out and says, you'll no see Celtic play that bad again. And that is what he said the previous defeat. And I was sitting going, I've heard this before. It's going to get better than this. However, I don't know. He was still playing Stirling Petrov at right back, and he was adamant he was sticking to this 4-2-2-2-2-2-2-2. Do you know what I mean?
That was fantastic, wasn't it? I remember even sitting in work some days, trying to work out who's going to play the following Saturday. And it got so complicated now. Not only had you to pick the names, you had to pick the 4-2-1-3-2-1.
Mental.
Like, we need to tell you, see in 50 years' time, they'll be hailing John Barnes as a technical genius.
I don't think so. I've got my doubts about that, Chris.
I've got you to bait a few times, Scott. I missed that one, didn't I? That's how ridiculous that was. But we started off well. We won 9 out of our first 11 league games.
Yeah.
And then we went to Ibrox again.
Yeah, but then it all went. Was that the Ching tonight one?
Aye.
And we beat 4-2, did we?
Yeah.
I think he scored. Berkowitz
scored. That's right. Scored a lovely goal that day, sweetheart.
Smashing goal. Well, see, the thing with Berkowitz, there was no doubt the boy was a very talented footballer, but by the time Martin O'Neill came, there was no way back from him.
No, because he was trying to sign John Hartson. Kick him in the head again.
He kicked himself, didn't he? But I mean, there was Lubo and Berkowitz, and the old adage was they couldn't play in the same team.
Mm-hmm.
And Berkowitz was a good player. That's no. But again, John Barnes had a bit of Tommy Burns about him. He signed Oliver Tabley.
Oh God! The original Bob Scare.
I thought that boy was going to be a superstar, and I thought so.
You really are good at this, aren't you? I can hear any of your pals that listen to this podcast, because you're going to get some rubbing in the pub at the weekend.
Oh, I didn't know I'm a dumpling. No, I was livid. I was livid when we signed Ian Wright. I was really, really livid. I was like, well, at that point, Henrik Larsson was Henrik Larsson. At that point, Henrik Larsson was a man, and we replaced him with a guy who couldn't get a game for West Ham United.
Yeah. Still scored his debut. Had the usual kiss of death. Celtic player scored in his debut.
Oh, to my.
We seek him here, we seek him there.
I was actually in a pub in Springburn. I didn't go that day. I was up in the Bells Bar in Springburn, and my everlasting memory is one of the local tea leafs had arranged to get back to steal everybody a Ralph Lauren green shirt, and ended up he must have stole about 38 shirts and brought them in that night, and that was every one of us were stolen with Ralph Lauren green shirts when the day we stole to 10.
Or count it down.
I was outside the ground. I was still living in London. I didn't have a season ticket then. Just about managed to get a season ticket just after it. But I can't remember the name of the boozer. There's a boozer on the corner of London Road and Springfield Road. And I basically stayed in there the whole game. Until about 10 minutes for the end, when I think they opened the gates, and I bombed in there, and I've still got the bottle of Celtic champagne that I legged into the superstore. Empty bottle of Celtic champagne, needless to say.
Oh yes he is, oh yes he is, oh yes he is, oh yes he is.
Oh, I think I would probably. I was at home. At that stage, I didn't go to the games. My dad, I remember the week before, my dad went up to Dunfermline. And obviously we drew, and he came back, and he was really worried and all this. He's like, this can't happen. Obviously I was born in 1990, so I'd never seen us win the league. So I do the next week. Obviously the game was on, we won, and I remember sitting waiting on my dad to come in, and it was probably one of the happiest times I've ever seen for him. And he just proceeded to get a bottle of champagne, pop it open, spray it all over the living room that night with the family there, and cover my mum's brand new chandelier and champagne, which she wasn't particularly pleased about. But he was absolutely delighted. But I couldn't. It was the first time I'd ever seen it. I always thought we were second. It sounds stupid, but really, like, for us to win it was quite a big thing.
On the throne, and he's a dedicated follower of Celtic. Oh yes he is, oh yes he is, oh yes he is, oh yes he is.
In the ground, bizarrely, my pal had a season book, and occasionally he wouldn't go because he worked, and he would ask me to take his wee boy, and on the morning at the 10, I heard the horn beating, and I looked out the window. He said, "Do you want to go to the game of the way?" And I said, "How are you not going?" "I'm too nervous, I couldn't believe it." It's like, I ain't bothered. Went, ended up on the pitch, etc.
Never to find is very rare.
I was sitting in 111, greeting my eyes out 18 years old, big guy Danny in front of us turned around and looked at me, started greeting, gains a cuddle. His young boy just looked at me, started laughing. I was like, don't worry son, you'll be greeting sometime soon. I don't know if he is, but I'm pretty sure he's enjoyed himself since.
A very important thing there. It wasn't in the budget to win the league and to stop the 10. It was in the budget to win every game and every season with the best team we could possibly put on the park within the confines of the money that was available to the manager and to the team. And that's what happened. That's what happened with Tommy Burns. That's what happened with Wim Janssen, and that's what happened with Joe Venglos. But a lot of people just don't get the fact that you can't spend more money than you earn. And I've never met a manager yet that that doesn't need another 3 players. you know, and that's true to this day. That was true of Tommy Burns. It was true of Wim Janssen. You know, they thought, managers always think, you know, they need more money. And they always have a beef with people, with the management or the directors when they don't get it. And again, that was going on at the time at Celtic. But at the end of the day, McCann's an exceedingly honest guy. And if you want to talk about the 3 amigos, I mean, that's just... these guys were just charlatans, chancers, liars. You know, they signed a contract in several languages, I might add. The contracts that McCann and the Celtic lawyers do are very unambiguous. With Di Canio, for example, Di Canio comes off the park. I can't remember where at the end of the season, and says he has a little problem with his contract. There is no problem with the guy's contract. It's in 2 languages. He's got 2 sets of international lawyers there. It's crystal clear. Basically, the situation with Di Canio is he used Celtic as a stepping ground into the British game, tucked one good season behind him, and disappeared into the Premiership, which was always his plan, and then invented a story for getting out of his contract. That's the story with Di Canio. Black and white, simple. But, the press are getting manipulated. Fergus is not offering succulent lamb. So what you read in the papers is a lot of tosh, and unfortunately you get fans that believe all the tosh.
So
and Hooydonk's exactly the same. He's had a good season, wants to go, he's got a contract, works his ticket into the Premiership with Nottingham Forest, and George Cadet's just a lunatic.
So you bring up a good point. You read these things in the paper, but still, all through that period, the fan culture changed with Celtic, right? And you had, Not The View, and you had all the websites now. How did Fergus feel about this sort of new age dawning, where there was more information available, fans were educated on more things than just who played centre forward? How did he deal with that?
Well, one of the things I did for him, and I did it with Matt McGlowan, is we organised road shows. So we would set up these road shows, and we did them all over the world, quite frankly, in Los Angeles, London, Glasgow, all parts of Scotland, Ireland, north, south, east, west, a lot. And we organised these things to get the message across. And some of these meetings were very, very tempestuous, because I already told you that, he's not offering succulent lamb to the press. Some people have got an agenda. The fans just don't get it. And the amount of road shows I've been to, give him the money, Fergus, just give Di Canio the money. Give him the money. Well, that's money you don't have, and the guy's got a contract. So one of the things we did is to get the message across, is to engage with the fans, to try and get the message across, exactly what was going on, how we had to build the stadium, how we didn't have any choice, how whilst we were paying for this, money would have been in lesser supply than it was, and we've got to live within their means, and we can't copy these crazy people in blue, because that's a recipe for disaster. So we're saying all these things, and once you communicate with fans, once you get it a point across, once you articulate it in a clear manner, and these road shows, what started off very often as a hostile crowd, more often than not ended up as an understanding crowd, depending on where you are and how well the team is doing at the time. But it was tough. But we did the road shows, and that was a way of getting the message across. Mm-hmm. And that's how we communicated with the fans and the fanzines. We did interviews with Not the View, Boyzone, I think was around at the time. Matt McGlone's first magazine, I can't remember what it was called. Once a Tim. Yeah, we did all of that. But it was never. I'm sticking in my craw. There's one point. It wasn't in the budget, to win the league or to stop the 10. It was in the budget to win every game, never mind every league. But not at any cost. Now, you could argue whether you could throw money at it, for one season, but. No, it's by and large, I'm a strong financial guy as well, and you got to act sensibly with the money.
So it got to 1999, David. Was there any change in his mind whenever he decided to sail up?
No. Hey, what he did tell me is that, my God, if I knew what I was getting into, the amount of time, the amount of work I would never have done this. It's not an envious job.
Yes, he would have.
Well, you never know, because he did it. But and I don't know how serious he was, but it was very, very difficult at very different times. But there was never any doubt, that after 5 years, he would go. Never any doubt.
And Dermot Desmond then came in as the largest shareholder with 19.8% of the holding.
Yeah.
McCann always gave you the impression that when he was going to sell the club, he would sell it to the right person. Was Dermot Desmond the right person in Fergus McCann's eyes, along with Alan MacDonald as chief executive and Frank O'Callaghan and stuff as chairman?
Well, what I can tell you is that he didn't say exactly what you said there. What he said was he was going to offer his half of the club to the other half, which are fans. Now, Dermot's a fan, who happens to have, best part of 20%. And then you've got all the other fans, but you've got to treat everybody equally. That should be a given. Everybody gets treated equally. Nobody gets any special treatment, and anybody with one share or 20% of the club gets treated equally. And that resulted in a bit of tension, I have to say, in the way out, because I did the deal on the way out as well. Handling Fergus's share sale. So there was a few arguments, nothing that serious. But the plan was to offer it to the other half, the fans, and that's what happened. Mm-hmm. And Dermot took up his full entitlement, and so did very many others. And Fergus left in '99. Another thing that comes up is all the money that he made. But you've got to remember, nobody is in control of the share price. Nobody had any idea what the share price would be when it kicked off. Nobody had any idea what the share price would be on a daily basis. And nobody certainly had any idea what the share price would be in 5 years' time. But McCann gets some criticism from some for the amount of money he made. Well, I know for a fact there's about 3,500 Celtic fans that cashed in their chips at a fiver, over the piece. So, you've got to watch. You don't call the pot's not calling the kettle black.
I know, but Fergus is an easy target for to be pointed at.
Yeah, because it's an awful lot of money, but no control over the share price. What's happening just now is a lot of revisionism going on, about what happened there. And one of the reasons why I'm speaking to you is, I hate revisionism. I was actually there, I actually did it, and I actually know what happened. And any time I see any attempts to sort of put a different complexion on what really happened, I try and stop that.
It's very interesting you bring up that point, because some of the people that I know and I talk to about Celtic would claim that the revisionism today is painting Fergus in a better light than what they remembered at the time.
Well, That's sort of true. I mean, what's true is that he was exceptionally unpopular when he was at Celtic. And I've tried to touch on the reasons why that was and why it wasn't justified. There were tough decisions needed, and he took those tough decisions. And when you've got the press against you for the reasons that I mentioned, and when you've got sniping from the side, you're going to get a bad press. So he was not a popular guy because for these reasons, the tough decisions, the press, the sniping. But at the end of the day, he's getting a good press now, essentially because he was right. Now, you can argue about his personality, you can argue about the way he went about things, but at the end of the day, he was right. And if you look at Rangers just now, there's lots of people that said we should be copying Rangers. You should give to Canio, $8,000 a week. You should give everybody all the money they want. Well, that's money you don't have. And that's tough decisions you're going to make. And these decisions were made. These are not popular decisions at the time. But the main reason why he's popular now, the main reason is probably the catalyst is probably Rangers. Mm-hmm. David Murray bought Rangers for £1 in 1988 and sold it for £1 in 2012, and in the middle lost £250 million. Dermot Desmond's running it in a sort of a Fergus-like manner.
But you're saying there about revisionism too. Like, obviously coming from Ireland, he split the Irish support.
Well, I know that, and it depends. Well, a lot of people in and around Celtic, there's a lot of vested interests. But in certain parts of Ireland, he's unpopular. In certain age groups, he's unpopular.
I remember at the time coming over on the buses and on the boats and all this here kind of stuff. And let's not beat about the bush. We're talking about boys against bigotry and all this here kind of stuff. And there just seemed to be rightly or wrongly, there seemed to be a stripping of the Irish identity of the club at the time.
Oh, rubbish. First of all,
I'm only telling you the way people talked at the time.
Yeah, but it's rubbish. Well, let me tell you, I don't know. He's a Scots-Irishman, or an Irish Scotsman, whatever it is, like myself. His folk are from Ireland, and he's totally into the Irish thing. And I remember, I used to go around a wee tour. He used to get his bonnet on and walk around the stadium and look at the work and slag people for not doing it properly and missing that crisp packet. Pick it up. And I remember stopping outside the dugout and he's going, "There's something wrong. There's something wrong here. I don't know what it is. Can you tell? It doesn't feel right." And I'm looking around going, "I don't know what it is. I've got it. The flags. Look at the flags. The Irish flag's missing. We can't have that. Get that Irish flag up there now. You speak to Tom Grant. Get that flag back." The boys against bigotry thing is a brilliant thing. That's what Celtic's all about. Celtic is a club that's available to every man, irrespective of race, creed, and religion. This is one of the things that I helped set up. It's available, the Celtic Credo, the Celtic Charter is available in 10 different languages. It doesn't matter whether you're Catholic, Protestant, black, white, whatever. You have a welcome home at Celtic Park. And that's what Boys Against Bigotry was essentially all about. We want everybody in here, irrespective of background.
David Lowe, that's been an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed that. Good fun.
No probs.
Talk to you again soon.
Right.
Thanks very much.
No problem. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Probably we should talk about the reason or the night John Barnes, his cards were up. So we played Cally Thistle in the Cup. And do you remember that was after the ground was closed because of wind?
Yeah, a bit of the railing fell down.
But again, Celtic Park has fallen down. The press had a field day again at our expense.
You say that was a big game. The game the week before, I'd gave up on him, Chris.
Again? How many times have you given up on Celtic?
No, on John Barnes. I gave up on John Barnes. We were 2-0 up against Hearts at Celtic Park, and we beat 3-2.
That's right. I was at that game.
My big mate, he'll remember. My big mate walked out with me, and I was. It was like again talking to your man. You know what I mean? He's going to go. He's going to go. He's going to go. I thought he should have went that day, and then next week was just I knew it was going to happen.
I'll tell you,
the only one thing I get right.
I'll tell you a funny story about that Hearts game, because a big pal of mine, we were coming out after the game, right? And Celtic were really good at 2-0, and he says, we were brilliant today. Pity they scored 3 consolation goals.
3 consolation goals,
Oh, God. I'm worn out. I mean, this has been a roller coaster tonight, so it has.
Inverness, Cali at home. And do you know what? The game was bad. It was everything after it was 10 times worse.
We were the laughing stock again, weren't we?
Exactly, mate. It was 10 times worse. Super Cali go ballistic. See that thing? See the guy who done that? I'd strangle him. Oh, that was horrendous, man.
It was. Like, if you were a total neutral, it was quite funny, like.
Oh, aye, but...
But I get your point. I'd strangle him too.
Man, it was that carried on for a good 5 years.
And there's been people who tried to do it again in other scenarios and stuff, but it just didn't stick the way it stuck that night. You know, Mark Viduka that night just not coming out for the second half, and you hear about the fight in the dressing room.
It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. The whole thing seemed ridiculous. I mean, I was reading up about it, and basically it was Eric Black was screaming at Mark Viduka for no trying. Mark Viduka threw his boots in the bin. Johnny Gould started going mental at Berkovic, and Lubo says he was sitting in the corner laughing, and he says he looked at John Barnes, and John Barnes didn't have a Scooby-Doo what to do.
Rude.
That's ridiculous. We can laugh now.
I know. But for a manager to go from June to February, that's pretty pitiful, isn't it? And then to bring Kenny Dalglish in, who had been hiding.
Exactly. See, the first day of the season, we were up Aberdeen, and did we win 4 or 5 nothing? And all the Celtic fans were all singing Johnny Barnes, Johnny Barnes. And then we go to that stage, you can just imagine him sitting there, no idea what to do. You see, he was told, according to Alan McDonald, the day after they had a big meeting, everybody was outside Celtic Park demanding heads rolled, and Alan McDonald pulled John phoned Ken Douglas and says, get your ass home, because he was in Spain at the time, as you remember.
That's right.
And he got John Barnes in and says, John, right, it's not working. What's going to happen is Ken Douglas is going to take the manager job and you're going to become his assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And John Barnes says, no chance. And then Ken Douglas come back, and John Barnes had been told he's let go, and Ken Douglas didn't want the job.
1994 to 1995 seen another radical design to Celtic away kits introduced. Green and yellow flashes across a white and back chest area, with a yellow and green coloured sleeve on each arm, gave a wee bit of an abstract feel to this kit. C.R. Smith logo was used in this shirt, and this kit was completed with green socks and green shorts with a white and yellow flash just beside the Celtic crest. A third kit was used from the 1994 to 1995 season, and this was a very neat black shirt which proved much popular than the away shirt, so much so that it became the official away kit for this season. The kit was predominantly black, but the top half of the chest had white and black elongated rectangular sections with green crisscrosses weaving through them. Green flashes from the shoulders dropped down thinly through the shirt, with a white C.R. Smith logo just located underneath this section. With the kit finished off with black shorts with green flashes down each side, with the bottom of each leg of the shorts having a miniature version of the elongated coloured sections just like the shirt. Black socks were completed with a white top featuring green Umbro logo diamonds. 1996 to 1997 seen a new radical and striking shirt design, which was warmly welcomed to our club's kit history. This kit was affectionately known as a Bumblebee kit. The luminous yellow shirt with black faded hoops on the main body with dark stripes down the arms was a huge success which captured everyone's imagination. A white C.R. Smith logo was present across the chest of the kit. Black shorts with 3 luminous yellow blocks just above the Umbro logo, and socks with luminous yellow and black hoops completed the iconic away kit. 1997 to 1998 seen the Bumblebee kits used throughout this season, with the only difference being a change of sponsor. Umbro was now the main shirt sponsor since the end of the C.R. Smith contract. However, during this season's pre-season tour, since the Umbro sponsorship deal wasn't yet in place, a special one-off sponsor featured on the shirt. Celtic FC was printed across the chest for the duration of our Dutch tour. For the 1998-1999 season, Celtic returned to a black away kit featuring 6 thin fluorescent lime hoops from the shoulders to the bottom of the shirt. The Umbro diamond and logo was the shirt sponsor for that season. Black shorts with a fluorescent lime trim at the bottom completed the kit, which seen black socks with a fluorescent lime hoop just around the shin. 1999 to 2000 seen the black kit remain, but the only difference being that we had a new shirt sponsor with NTL featuring on the shirt.
Ken Douglas wanted to remain in the role he was in.
Jeez.
That's how ridiculous it was. He wanted to stay in the role he was in, and he was told that he'd be getting fired if he didn't take the job to at least the end of the season. You know what I mean?
Tragic days.
And then we started having press conferences and boozers and stuff.
Oh, I haven't even talked about that.
Again. That's ridiculous, isn't it? We had a press conference in Baird's Bar. That's what makes it so sad about Baird's Bar closing. Just for that alone.
That's right. I know. In fact, and, you know, banning Hugh Keevins and falling out in pub. It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
At the time, it seemed also normal and the right thing to do.
It's one strike for the fans having it in Bird's Bar.
I swear to God, anybody who's listening, go into the Celtic wiki and look at the story about the Bird's Bar interview, because you've got guys just swearing on the tap at people.
And they didn't even set a backdrop or anything. They were just sitting in the pub.
Just sit him and read that himself.
With a couple of old yellow newspapers behind them.
Ah, fantastic.
Nailed to the wall.
Yeah, that was Kenny, isn't he? He done the one in the association as well. And that was the one, what was it, Finbar chipped. He chipped to Higgy, didn't he?
He was the bouncer, wasn't he?
He chipped to Hugh Keevins, but they denied. They didn't think his name was really Finbar.
You couldn't make this up.
No, this is what I'm saying, right? And I said at the beginning, I'll reiterate it here. See all that madness every summer, madness during the season, madness. See when Martin O'Neill came, and then he was there for 5 years or 4 years, whatever. And it was all calm. Every summer, all you had to worry about... You think about this summer, we'd nothing to kind of go mental about, did we?
No.
I mean, it was all kind of just... You kind of imagine sitting in a room, just looking about, just waiting for something to happen. Whereas we had these seasons, and every summer, it was just nuts. People getting sacked, people slagging people off, people leaving, people coming. It was nuts, man.
I kind of miss it, Scott. I think Lanny should get that boot at the end of the summer just to give us something to shout about.
We should get a new manager every summer. But it's going to be something we've never heard of.
So that season obviously was a disaster on the field, with the exception of the League Cup final. We won the League Cup that year, and I have never been as deflated watching us win a cup final in my whole life. Up at Hampden, and you know, they had those big sort of blow up fluttery men, and you know, it was all razzmatazz, and it looked like it had been done on a budget of about 15 quid. Sitting at Hampden going, no.
All I remember about that cup final, because I had to actually go back, I knew Tommy Johnson scored, I didn't know who scored the other one, but I got a wee flashback. Vidal Rousseff had scored in the first half, but as it seemed to me, Tommy Johnson was the only guy who was happy. The rest of these are all like, this is a damp squib, innit? And Ken Dalglish was always torn face anyway. He didn't want a job. And Alan McDonald knew that he'd made an arse, he'd spent too much money on
he was
a Brazilian who was dumpling. And Tommy Johnson was kind of oblivious. Yes, look at me.
Well, he won a medal.
Outstanding, aye.
Brilliant.
Mental, man. Aye.
God, it all got boring after that. See, UEFA Cup finals and winning trebles and stuff like that. That pales in comparison to all the fun we had the latter part of the 90s, Scott.
It's but I don't know. I wouldn't say it makes you a better fan, right? Because that's a ridiculous thing to say. But I don't know. It's certainly nothing surprises you. That's after all that stuff. Nothing surprises you.
It gives you those wee things you can pull out now and again, you know, when somebody's raving and ranting and getting their blood pressure up, and you can just throw out there. So you don't even remember Raphael's shite.
Oh, brilliant, aye.
Do
you remember the time Ayo Berkeley stuck her fingers up his? That was that game where a guy fell off the stand. How ridiculous is that?
And lived.
Aye, and started waving everybody.
That was the biggest crime of all.
In Glasgow.
Like there was a guy threw himself off the stand to kill himself at Celtic Park and Field. I mean, we couldn't even kill ourselves.
I couldn't even do that, right? Dear God. Brilliant, man. Aye. Did you see some memories?
Scott McCorry, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm about to start greeting.
Now, whenever you talked to me earlier on, you were saying to yourself, I didn't do my homework. I haven't got homework done. I've been reading on it, but I haven't got everything done. I don't think we missed too much there.
To be honest, who did we miss? We missed Jim Farry.
We did miss Jim Farry. We couldn't end up a podcast talking about Jim Farry, could we?
Don't worry about it. He stayed in Canby's lying and my mate screamed abuse at him once. He go Beansworth.
There you are, lads and lasses. That's the end of chapter 11. Absolutely terrific again. Brilliant fun. Great to catch up with Scott McCorry from the HuddleBoard and from the Temporary Stand podcast. Great chat. Really, really enjoyed it. Also, special thanks to David Lowe, who gave us the other side of the story of the McCann takeover and the plan that Fergus had once he was in power. Of course, any of these Celtic history podcasts wouldn't be complete without thanking the wonderful human Torpedo, Chris from the Paradise Report, Pat from Half the World Away podcast, Stuart from the CelticShirt.co.uk, and of course our roving reporter Stephen Monaghan for getting all the little sound bites. Thanks as well goes to Henrik Larsson. It was an interview we'd done with Lost Boys a little while ago and just fitted in nicely. And thanks too goes to Marty Flynn and Jared Deal from Lost Boys for doing the Jimmy Johnson tribute. And last but by no means least, for the music, thanks goes to Charlie and the Boys and The Wakes. Remember, you can donate to the Celtic History Podcasts by going to www.hailhailmedia.com and look for the Celtic History Podcasts link, and all the money that we raise will go to charity. One thing I did forget to ask Scott before he finished was his charity of choice, and he chose Scottish Autism. And you can read more about Scottish Autism at scottishautism.org. So chapter 12 promises to be another marathon. We've got Hector Bandito from the E-Tims, and we're going to talk about 2000 to 2010. That's right, Martin O'Neill, Treble, Seville, Gordon Strachan, Tony Mowbray, all that good stuff. And remember that if you have any memories of those days, send your sound bites to lostboys@gmail.com and we'll get you on, and you too can be part of the Celtic History Podcast. So that's us for now. Remember, hailhailmedia.com, Celtic History Podcast, and go make your donations in there. We're getting close, but still never enough. And we have 2 episodes left, and that'll all be finished by Christmas, no doubt. My name's Chris McGuigan. You've been listening to Celtic History Podcasts. Talk to you all soon. Cheers.
Being a Celtic man has brought me many highs and lows in my life, but it's brought me immense pride to be part of something which is much more than football. My greatest memory is not even watching the game. I couldn't bear to do it. It was the St Johnstone game in 1998. I couldn't even listen to it on the radio. I took myself away until full time. When I ventured out, the first person I walked into was one of my well-known Rangers supporting friends. I could tell by the look in his face that they'd got beat. He came over and shook my hand, congratulated me, which he had not done in many a year. My overriding sense was of complete relief. We'd stopped it. It was over. Quickly followed by massive elation. We'd actually done it. We'd actually stopped it. Walked into the pub and the place was jumping. Everyone except the Rangers fans were dancing about. Fans from every other club were coming up and congratulating any Celtic fan they could see. It was a fantastic day and a fantastic feeling. Sometimes watching Celtic can be difficult, but it's always worthwhile.
Father tells me it was Morton at home, and he was under strict orders for her mother not to take me into the jungle. We ended up sitting in the front stand, and if memory serves me right, I'll not remember it, but he tells me it was season 80-81, and I felt the guy sitting in the seat in front of me turned around and wanted to have a square go with my dad because I felt his hood with crisps.
Managed to get into Ibrox one day, doing a wee job, managed to find myself in the blue room, cutting about, had a wee thought, so I went down the stair, get a wee bottle of juice, came back up the road, and to see what was happening, had a wee chat with the cleaners, seen this wee trophy that was sitting there, and I was like, any chance I could take that one out and do a wee swap? Lassie's like, carry on son, there you go. I just took this wee trophy, don't even know when it was they won or anything like that, but took it away and replaced it with a wee Lucozade bottle, and apparently that, I think that's a thing of legend apparently, so